I'm Fredrik from Filmpedagogerna, Folkets, and I'm sitting here, well, today is Filmpedagogerna, I guess. I'm sitting here at the Swedish Gothenburg Book Fair with three very extinguished guests, Carolyn Wilson, Conny Brännberg, and Henrik Selin. I would like to talk about MIL, because we've had this conference here now, the UNESCO conference, the 9th medie conference. Of course, we want to reach out with more knowledge about MIL, but who knows what MIL is about? You are chosen because you are experts on your level. Carolyn, you represent the international level, and Henrik, the Swedish national level, and Conny, you're the regional level. I might be the local then, of course. But I would like to start just you saying a few words about who you are and what you do, just so that the audience will get to know you. Would you like to start, Carolyn?
Sure, I'm happy to start. So I have been involved in media literacy education for over 30 years now. I started as a classroom teacher in Canada, working at the elementary and secondary level, and then I moved to teacher education at the university level. So it's been a really thrilling, exciting career, actually, with many wonderful opportunities, like what this conference has presented, for example. I have been involved with the Association for Media Literacy in Ontario, Canada. I was the president of the AML for over 10 years. And I've been on the board of Media Smarts, and most recently I've been chairing the International Steering Committee for the Global Alliance on Partnerships for Media and Information Literacy, and that's the UNESCO-initiated alliance that has some 500 members in 112 countries. So that's a little bit about me. And I'm very passionate about media and information literacy. It is my life's work.
We know. And MIL stands American Media Literacy Association.
The Association for Media Literacy, because we're in Canada, so in Ontario, Canada.
Thank you.
And Ontario, I'll just add a little bit, was the first English-speaking jurisdiction in the world to mandate media literacy education. So the AML was really the driving force behind that. So the Association for Media Literacy in Canada. No trouble. Says the proud Canadian.
Very good, very good.
Yeah, I'm representing then the regional level, and I'm the equivalent to Regional Minister of Culture then in Region Västra Götaland. And before I turn into politics, and now there's a lot to do as a policymaker in this area, but I used to be a teacher in communication and media and been very much involved in a former organization in Sweden called School and Parent Organization, Hemaschool. So I travel a lot having lectures for parents when we saw the influence on young people, what happened when we got cable TV, satellite TV, and all new kinds of informations. And right now then, I'm involved in and trying to emphasize like a bottom-up perspective on those questions. I mean, of course, I believe in the international organizations, the national importance of a strategy, but we need to do this. And in my part, then, I really would like to involve parents and the home and the regular daily discussions about this. And then, of course, we work with people in various organizations, and we see now tremendous interest from librarians. It used to be people teaching in films. Now the librarians, the school teachers are adding on. So now we are trying to emphasize also that we as a region can emphasize a national strategy about MIL. And when I was involved in this on the field, we didn't have this MIL term then, so I was way before that.
Yeah.
Then we talked about influence of media.
Of course, yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Excellent.
I'm Henrik Selin. Nice to be here. I have a background as a civil servant within the cultural and media policy field. So I've had a broader outview of media policy, where, of course, media and information literacy in Sweden has been one of the tools in the toolbox, if you will. I've been heading the Swedish Press Subsidies Council, which is an organization that provides press subsidies for those newspapers who cannot survive without that, a common tool in the toolbox as well in our country. I've also been cultural attaché for Sweden in Brussels in the European Union Corporation there, and I'm currently on leave from my daytime job at the Swedish Institute, where I'm responsible for intercultural dialogue between our country and civil society in other countries. And the reason I'm on leave is actually because I'm working as a principal secretary for a government commission on media and information literacy and protection of the democratic dialogue in Sweden. Let me say a few words about that, and I'm sure we're going to come back to that, but the reason that the Swedish government has appointed such a committee, government committee or government commission, is a tool that government appoints when it wants to prepare new legislation or have someone look into a policy field and prepare developments within that field. And within the field of media and information literacy, of course, that field has become much more, it's always been relevant, highly relevant, but it's become even more relevant today because of the developments within digital platforms and digital media consumption in the world, with the, let's say, the not so pretty sides of that digitization process and it is actually mentioned specifically in the mandate to this commission that we will look into measures to strengthen resilience of citizens in our country in the face of challenges such as disinformation, propaganda, and hate speech online. So the reason that there is a commission looking into the field of media and information literacy, trying to see how can the work that has been done for quite a long time, I haven't been in the field as long as you, Carolyn, but it has been around in Sweden for a long time, mainly focusing on children and young people in schools and also in the library systems in our country. How can that asset, if you will, in our digital time be broadened to also cover all citizens? Because basically the skills that media and information literacy build are necessary for every citizen in the times that we live. So
Yeah,
that's where I come from.
it's a great introduction, and it shows the development of the concept too. We actually met more than 20 years ago.
I know.
At a media
Good thing
conference.
people can't see us because they won't recognize how we've aged.
At a media conference in Toronto.
That's right.
Are there any images?
Probably out there somewhere, but not on social media, thankfully.
It was before that time.
Exactly.
But it was a very interesting experience because, as you said, Conny, we weren't talking about digitization at all. The internet was coming along, but it wasn't used the way we'd use it today. We were talking about checking sources, of course, but it was the influence of the media. But what I got from that conference was the difference between the North and the South of the world. This being a global conference. That what we did, the media literacy in Sweden, was more like fun, something you did as an extra on Fridays before leaving for holidays. While the people that I met from South America and Africa and even Asia, it was a matter of life and death. And during this time, those 20 years, it has switched a bit. We are more in line, because now it is a matter of life and death here too. And then UNESCO came along with a new concept. We had media literacy and we had information literacy, and never they met. Well, they met not that often anyway. But when UNESCO introduced the media and information literacy concept, you were active at that time, and you were the head editor of the framework for media and information literacy at UNESCO, a framework that we use in our teaching all the time, because it's very pedagogical in how why the use of MIL should be in society. Could you tell us something about that?
Sure. It's interesting, I think, that the development of the concept MIL is really not that far from what we've always been embracing as media literacy, actually. But I know, in part at least, UNESCO wanted to emphasize the information literacy component, really to ensure that librarians and other groups in society, other people who had been focusing on the information literacy piece, really came together with media educators to look at what was happening in the digital environments that had been created and really in which we're all living. So it was really meant to, I think, bring the traditions and the pedagogy of media literacy together with the practice of information literacy specialists, as obviously we need to be prepared to investigate and analyze and evaluate the sources of information beyond our immediate experience that tell us what we know about the world, virtually all that we know or think that we know about the world beyond our immediate experience comes to us through the media. So it seemed quite a natural fit that those two worlds, if you will, would come together. But I don't see it at all as being unnatural. I think it's something that is a really good fit. And in fact, the experts on both sides, I think, really strengthen the argument for media literacy and have really helped to move it forward.
Yeah. I just fell in love with it straight away, the concept and, of course, the framework. In the opening words of it and the foreword to the document, Carolyn wrote that MIL is about concept of communication, what we do to become human, to make societies, and that makes it a very powerful concept.
Right.
Our dear friend Ulla Karlsson, UNESCO professor here in Gothenburg, has written a lot about this concept and done a lot to promote MIL in Sweden. She points out the wideness of the concept and how it implies to almost every area of society. But when you try to explain what MIL is about, the first thing when you say the abbreviation, people think IT, ICT. So how do we do to reach out with the complexity of the concept? How do we make use of it the best?
A lot of it has to do with to be aware of what kind of information that you really can trust. I mean, I think that's the basis. It used to be that we relied on severe and serious editorial process. Like you trusted the publishing company for a book or the chief of editor in a magazine or a newspaper. And when everyone is his or her own publisher, and now with social media, we also share a lot of information, so we are co-publishers with them. And if we cannot evaluate what's right or valid information, and then we share that, then we're also responsible for what we're sharing. And like in the Swedish context, it seems like we are very naive. We have all the technology, we have access to all the information, and we share it without asking what's relevant in this. So that's why I think that this is not only an important issue for the formal educational system, it's for all citizens, right. And that's why we want to involve the whole population.
Yeah, of course.
And of course, in my mind, then, especially then, to next step for us is to involve parents.
Have you experienced any problems with the
terminology?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let me be, very reasoning here. I'm not proponing a particular view on this, but I think we're all indebted to the work that has been done by those who came early and started with media literacy, information literacy, and the work that UNESCO has so bravely done over such a long time, expanding that concept. And I agree, Ulla makes a point that concept is even wider than the UNESCO definition of it.
Exactly.
But I think we should, at least that's an idea that I get now, that we also work very much with looking how can these skills that we're all talking about, whatever we call them, reach out to all citizens, regardless if they want to be reached out to or not. I think we need to differentiate between the concept that we use when we talk about it as a professional arena, especially between professional people, researchers and others who work with this, and educators. Because there you can talk about, we're in a media and information literacy environment. We talk about the various parts of that concept. And we need to differentiate between that and what we say when we reach out to the everyday man or woman on the street here in Sweden or in the suburbs of Uganda or wherever it is. Because I have yet not met almost anybody on the streets of Sweden who resonate with MIK, which it is in Swedish. Yeah. They simply don't understand it. And when we pronounce it fully, medie, informationskunnighet, they understand a little bit more. But my point is that I think we need to find, and there are many, many other words being used by organizations reaching out to the factual problems that people do relate to. So when we, for instance, we've made a mapping as part of our work of work being done, and that's using the phrase in our directive, strengthening knowledge and resilience in Swedish citizens on the whole scale. We find that maybe some 30%, 35% of that are organizations naming what they do under the label of MIK.
Yeah.
And the rest are organizations doing fantastic work, but they're not labeling. Some of them are specifically not wanting to label it as MIK, but they're using digital skills or something else.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a problem that they don't always talk about the same thing. And then there are others who do a really good job, and they're using other phrases such as anti-racism, dialogue, democratic discussions, you name it. There are a wide array of, let's say, extremely relevant topics to the target groups out there in society. So my point is, I think that with MIL, we need to find ways of both offering proper, thorough educational programs which can cover all the aspects. And that's something it's easy to do. Not easy to do, but it's something you do when you have formal education systems and also some non-formal education systems. Whereas to reach out to the everyday people that walk around here, we also need to combine that with simpler, more awareness-raising measures, which don't always have to talk about the concept of MIL. So that's my long explanation to how I see it, how we see it.
Yeah.
So let's not make the definition be a problem for the outcome that we're all wanting.
Right, or a barrier.
Or a barrier,
Right,
exactly.
right.
Exactly.
When we talk about media and information literacy often, we talk about it as something that is focused on preparation for life and for work today, and the competencies related to that. And then more specifically, when we talk about media literacy, we really define it as being something concerned with how the media operate, how they construct meaning, how they can be used, and how to evaluate the information that they present. I agree that the terminology can be problematic, and we do have to, I think, make sure that doesn't become a barrier to the good work that's being done, or to understanding that work or communicating it, right? Sharing the stories about all of that, the successes and the challenges. But sometimes I do worry a little bit that if we're not naming the field or identifying it somehow, then it also can be lost if it doesn't have a name or a place. And I know we struggled with that a little bit in Ontario, excuse me, when we were developing the curriculum for elementary and secondary schools. And one of our ministers of education and the team there really kept emphasizing it has to be identified. So it has to be named, rather, so it has an identity and it has a place, which I thought was quite interesting. But Ulla's point about it being, really a wider arena even than what is defined is really, really important to remember, because the media and media literacy concepts underpin so many areas, so many aspects of life and work, that it really is all embracing. But I think we do have that challenge of communicating its relevancy and what exactly it does mean, because you can have anti-racist education or education about violent extremism, let's say, without really including media literacy competencies. So we do want to make sure that media literacy is part of all of those discussions and part of those programs.
I mean, it's easy to be accepted to say that MIL is about the tools that we need to communicate with the rest of society and be part of it, be active citizens. But when we start talking about MIL as a prism through which you can see all aspects of society through, or a holistic concept that is important to all the human rights today, it gets a bit more difficult, doesn't it? But I think the complexity and the broadness of the concept is still needed, especially in these times of change. Because, I mean, the basis of MIL, well, the core of it is values. It's not technology or economy or being brilliant. It's about shared values and trust. I mean, how we build societies. But it's interesting with the MIL concept because Sweden has been very slow when it comes to adapting it. The framework was published in 11, was it? 2011, so. Yeah. Yes. And only 2 years after, Västra Götalandsregionen arranged the first MIL day here in Sweden, and you were here.
That's right, I remember that
so
very well.
Back.
Thank you. That was such.
You were our keynote
fun.
speaker then. Yeah. So please, could you, Conny, tell us a bit about why you decided to hop on the MIL wagon, why it felt like something, because you are the first region in Sweden to implement MIL into your actions, and you're the first region to organize a global MIL week conference.
As far as the term is concerned, it's quite difficult to use it in most environment. I think it's very good that UNESCO has the framework. It's like a container. You can go there, you can get your information, but then you have to do it in different areas. And as a region then, we are responsible for so many areas. We can say this is an issue for the education system or for the library system or for people working with film. But we also have the healthcare system. So we try to involve this. So like all kids in Sweden are born in a hospital. There's a lot of preparatory courses for the parents. And that's why we need to even get the nurses and doctors involved in this, to have a discussion with the parents about what kind of environment are you going to raise your kids in, to start in that area. So that's why as a region then we are involved in so many different areas, but then also to be able to get the people, those that are the we have a Swedish word called eldsjäl, like fire souls, people that got this on their heart, this passion, and they want to get them together. And that's what one of our organizations is doing once a year. And now then the interest is so big for that one day, and it's also during the Gothenburg Film Festival. So it's a good combination that you can also attend the film festival. And now then the idea was it should be a regional day for our regional people, but now then the rest of Sweden is knocking on the door, and that's why we need to raise this also to the national level, like we have done a lot. But as a reason then, I see so many opportunities to actually go to the UNESCO container to pick out certain ideas of it. I mean, MIL is such a variety of aspects. And I think this should be in my dream environment. I mean, of course, we can do it within the curriculum in the school, but also in spare time, and especially in the daily environment at home. That parents are actually questioning what are the kids actually watching, and right now we can see that a lot of parents have no idea what's available in various kinds of medias, but the kids, they find it. And all the interest, especially in social media. I mean, I have a 4-year-old grandkid, and I mean, I've been sitting with him, and he can't read. And how can he find the information that he's looking for? And I've been sitting hours trying that he should explain for me how is he navigating in this complex system, and he's four, and he's doing it, and he knows exactly, but he doesn't have the words for it. But he knows what he's after, and that's why I think that it's important that the local municipality and the policymakers in the local environment, but in the region, and also then if we can get this together then on a national and international environment, then maybe we can have some contribution to other countries, but we also, in this country of great technology, we have a lot to learn about the soft matters of this.
I mean, I'm very impressed and proud to live in Västra Götaland, and impressed by your work. Happy about it, because you actually fund us, my organization, which is a good thing. But finally, the government is coming along.
True.
And I mean, we did get new words to our curriculum about the digitization. It's about competencies, but also the two programs that were defined last year by the government was the one you're working for, and the other one was for the Media Council, to be a node for MIL. But those two projects or programs actually mention the words media and information literacy.
It's interesting that a country which is, without bragging, as developed as Sweden is, that we've not come further when it comes to actually having a policy. I was, a bit ashamed yesterday when the lady from, I think, Croatia pointed out on European research on where European countries stand in terms of whether they have a policy or not, clear policy for the work of media and information literacy. And Sweden is one of the countries that doesn't, because there is no clear policy. There is, as you say, good developments last year. I salute the Västra Götalands region for raising the need for that, because you're making a good point, and I think you're perhaps the region in the country that makes that point the best, because you've done a lot of work. But it's true, and now when we see, that doesn't mean that there's not good work being done, but there's really good work having been done for a long time. The Media Council has been doing a lot of work, and there's others. But now, just recently, in the last couple of years, we've seen that the school has actually put it in, or the government has put it into the curriculum under the heading of digital competences, not media information literacy. But if you read the wording, it's very good.
It is.
But it's interesting. So that's just an example of how the conservatism, when it comes to what you label things under, points out in a country like Sweden. As you say, there's also, in addition to that, there's also, and I say again, that's very much based on the mishaps of Mark Zuckerberg and his friends with their experiments. They've actually made, or not them alone, but them together with polarization and an increased distrust in institutions and media around the world, has raised attention again, so that government has also put a commission on the floor and given an assignment to the Media Council, which I think is a good thing about considering making the MIL work more relevant to others, because their job now is to take a coordinative role, being the node in coordination of IT, digitization policy, security policy, and other sectors who are doing work under different labels, and coordinating them into some sort of common understanding. And that they're insisting on doing that under the heading of media and information literacy. And I think that's a good thing. But I think, again, when those organizations put it down in their work and disseminate it in their fields, by the way, who have much more money and resources than the media and information literacy field, because that's under the Ministry of Culture, which is a problem in itself, then they will probably still name it something else. And that is still, as long as it doesn't come, as you say, Carolyn, as long as it doesn't become a barrier, I think we can live with it. Because as long as the definition doesn't become a barrier, I think we can live with the fact that it's called different things. But in terms of looking at it as a professional arena where you actually add research and evaluation, then it's good to have, as you say, a field which is named and that has its understanding.
For research and for policy, I think definitely. It's such an interesting discussion. I would love to stay for long, but it's getting really hot in here, isn't it? Should we just end up by talking about the future? Have a little round and then call it a day. Would you like to start, Carolyn? What's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years?
30.
Yeah, that's right. 3 to 5.
Well, you
35.
you can jump to 35 if you want to.
That's a really good question.
Well, the future.
And maybe I'll address it by identifying some of the gaps or areas that I feel maybe need to be addressed, not only locally, if I think of the Canadian context, but internationally as well. I think one of the challenges that we're facing is that there really is a need for capacity building. There's a lot of talk about the need for media and information literacy now, as you mentioned, of course, because of the Facebooks and concerns about fake news and propaganda and all the rest of it, and the social media environments that have been created. So there's a lot of talk about it right now, and media and information literacy is very popular, which is terrific, although it seems everyone is jumping on the bandwagon and saying they're doing it, whether or not perhaps they really are, which is another issue, something maybe to be addressed in the near future. And that's really related to the point that I'm making, that I think there really is a need for capacity building. And if we only think about education for the moment, if I just use that as the example, media literacy is being prioritized, or media and information literacy, but there really hasn't been a kind of a structured, systematic support offered for teachers. And this is a need around the world, actually. So there's a real interest in media literacy being part of education, but not really yet an investment in supporting teachers in delivering that education. I have never met a teacher who's not interested in doing it, but they do feel ill-prepared or ill-equipped to do so. And so I think that needs to be an investment in the near future, so that there is capacity building, so that programs then, once developed, can be implemented, can be evaluated, potentially then replicated or scaled for those that are successful. And I think if we really want media and information literacy to have an impact, that's something that we should be thinking about. The other thing I would say in terms of the near future is that I think it's also important to think beyond the current moral panic that is related to fake news. And of course, that's important. I'm not for a second suggesting that it isn't. But like the media violence panic, if I can use that word, of a couple of decades ago, the focus on fake news may fade or may change. And we do want to make sure that media and information literacy is sustainable beyond that, because it is about more than news literacy. It's about communication, it's about relationships, it's about identity, it's about life and work, right, in this global village. So that's something else I think we need to prepare for and continue to talk about, and reinforce Ulla's concept that media and information literacy is much broader and much more complex than we sometimes admit.
Interesting. Thank you.
So I'll stop there.
Yeah.
That's the next 3 years. I'll talk about the next 5 years in the next round. No.
Next time. Conny.
Since I'm a politician, then I have to raise the question, what can we do as politicians? And if I look on a global environment, and there are different strategies how to do this, and a lot of politicians, they are not in favor of the freedom of speech. And they're discussing how free can freedom be, and how should we limit the freedom. And I usually use two metaphors about current politicians today. One is the build walls and trying to protect. And we are scared of what's on the other side of the wall. And then we have the other type of politicians who build bridges. And I think this is one of the big things, and how should we do this? Because some policies, they try to limit all the thinking outside the box. And we see that in Europe then very strong now, how governments are trying to limit the freedom of journalism, They try to stop internet, or at least to limit the influence of what's happening. So I wouldn't dream of trying what will happen in 20 years, but because if we look back 20 years, we didn't hardly have the internet. So I mean, it's so difficult to speculate in the future. But I think it's a daily battle that we have to win, and that's why it's like democracy. If you don't emphasize the values of democracy, you have no democracy. And I think MIL is a daily battle in the homes, in the schools, in national organizations, and also for us as policymakers.
Great. Thank you. Henrik.
I would say I'm very optimistic, actually, to your question, because I mean, what's happening in Sweden now, basically, partly because of the backside of the internet and the dark side, which I agree, and it's a very good point, that may fade when, other things happen. But I think what that has shed light on in Sweden, at least, is a renewed need to talk about the structures and the building of democracy. Not only the problems that we talk about here, and people are talking much more about civic education or democratic education, if you will, encompassing also other parts. And I think what we could do if we do it right, and that's the perspective of us as a commission, is to try to use this momentum to consolidate and build structures around media and information literacy, making sure that it will, because everybody in the field that we're talking with are asking for long-term sustainable conditions, and they're not having that. So I think that could be a good way of actually bridging the problem that we're in now with the needs of that sector, which is, as it's totally true in Sweden as well, even though we're a well-off country, all the work being done in media literacy, almost all of it, it's very short-term and passion people-driven, which is good. But so I think that's a positive thing. I think we can manage to do that now, and I fully agree. And I will really bring that point back with us as well for the capacity building work. It is also very clear that those who will deliver those kinds of work with our youngs and also with others is teachers and others working to perform this task. And I think that's something that we're, again, optimistic. Just add one thing that I think Sweden must do more is to listen to other countries as well, because we've been very much focusing on our own capacities here. And I think there's so much. It's the first time I'm looking at a topic and investigating it from a commission point. I've done that before, where the whole world is looking at the same problem simultaneously. So there's so much interesting things going on in the world that you drown in it, but it's just so much interesting. And I think yesterday's conference was really good insight. Not all of it, but some very important stuff. So we've got a lot to learn in our country.
And as a meeting place, a networking place,
True.
I mean, we do have so much to learn from each other.
Yeah.
And, well, Henrik Selin, Conny Brännberg, Carolyn Wilson, thank you so much for being here for 45 minutes with me in this extremely hot, or is it 40 minutes?
Great opportunity to seize the day and have this discussion.
Exactly. Thanks.
It's very important.
We could have stayed for longer. We have so much to talk about, and I'm so happy for your ideas and words. Thank you.
Thank you, Fredrik.
Thank you.